you know, it's a massive piece of engineering and machinery. I mean, it's a peak of sort of American industrialization. But even more so, trains were such a big part of American life all the way up through the big freeway and car era. So much freight, but people and everything came by train. Trains would make what a city would be. So much of the material culture, the way everything existed in 19th and 20th century America, so much of it was framed around trains, both romantically but also practically. People would take everything coming and going to wherever they traveled so much by train. And so all of that has largely slipped away from our modern society. So for many people, this sort of expression of mechanical construction in an era of digital, it's kind of fascinating to see just how complex and how large and how much railroads were a part of our prior life. Well, there's only a few left. There was quite a few that were built, and as I say, they were built in the height of the railroad era. They were built to carry a tremendous amount of cars and freight, and there was a level of complexity where there were engineers and mechanics and machinists, and I mean, there was a whole just a group of people that had to maintain these things. So it's really remarkable in this digital age that we would still have something like this available. Such a big part of the world that's long since passed. I will say that what I do know about the railroad has as much to do with just the just the way these massive locomotives would take millions of tons of material across America. And for Utah, with our mountainous area, it was trains like this that allowed them to do it without helper trains. Helper Utah is named after the fact that there had to be an extra locomotive that would be attached and take the cargo all the way over Soldier Summit. There's other places where helper trains were situated. This allowed the railroad company to move all this massive amount of material without that kind of assistance in midway through its travels. You know, it's the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad, and Utah has led the nation in its celebration. Spike 150 has engaged with Union Pacific in such a way to say, let's get as many people as we can out to see the kind of emblematic trains. And of course, we can't bring up the Jupiter, we can't do the 119 that were there in Promontory Summit. Now, there are facsimiles, and there's wonderful ways of seeing them now at Promontory Summit. But the big boy is that kind of way of letting people see just how big and how important trains were in American culture. For Springville and Spanish Fork, trains were a big part of our history. I mean, some of the earliest trains, a group of Springville businessmen created a train system that went up through Spanish Fork Canyon in the 1880s. Eventually, Union Pacific has that line, but the Denver and Rio Grande, which was a huge network that went all the way to Mexico and to California, had one of its base of operations here in Salt Lake City. So for most people, if they lived in Utah 50 years ago, they either had family members or they were somehow connected with this industry. So it's fun now to see just how your relatives, how your grandfather may have worked and lived around this kind of industry.
This is the 4014 backhead of the steam locomotive. You've got your valves here and you've got your gauges. Various gauges. You have air brake gauge there. You've got your boiler pressure gauge here. Here's your steam whistle chain. We've got radio over here for the engineer. We've got his air brake system right here. That's number 8 Air Westinghouse, 1941. You've got your power reverse right there, and here's your throttle. Then on this side over here is where the fireman sits. And this gentleman or lady would boil water for us. They've got a pressure gauge right there. They also have an atomizer gauge which tells them how much pressure we're atomizing the oil that comes in to burn.
Union Pacific had asked for volunteers for people to come out and, answer questions, just safety, help people keep people safe when they're around the steam locomotives, answer questions. They mainly try to ask people that have a love and passion to trains as much as I do. So a lot of the volunteers you see here today are from local train clubs or train fans or enthusiasts that just want to be a part of this great opportunity to see something of this importance. It's just exciting to see a steam locomotive actually restored and put into operation for, educational opportunities. I know there's just something about seeing a steam locomotive, the sound, the sight. As the steam locomotive goes by, the ground literally shakes, and it's hard to put it into words. It's just a love for trains. Not everybody sees that. For example, my wife Chris, she doesn't see what's so exciting about it. So you have to be in my shoes or another person's shoes to really truly understand why we love trains. But it's exciting to see this, and I'm personally thankful for that opportunity to volunteer and help be a part of this great organization. And we're thankful for Union Pacific Railroad. I mean, to spend the time and the money to restore this locomotive is phenomenal. I never believed that I'd ever have an opportunity to see a big boy locomotive actually in operation, so this is exciting to see this.
History's not a pastime. History is due diligence. It's what we sort out and understand before we move forward. For our modern age, as we begin to understand where we're going, the population of Utah County is going to double in the next 40 years. We're going to have to address transportation issues. We're going to have to sort out living conditions and densities and so on. And so I think when you take a clear, better look at the past, the errors and the corrections and the things that worked out right, it helps us to be better, more responsible, create better lives for ourselves and our children ahead. There's some big conflicts and issues in the future that need to be sorted out. And so when you, say, examine something like the railroad system and how it worked in the past, it can help us see where we're going to go, how we should go in the future.